Meeting to order on Friday, April 9th at 9:02. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the March 26th special meeting. And thank you again, Steve, for stepping up to the plate and doing those minutes.
You're welcome.
Can I have a motion to approve them?
I just have one correction.
Okay. Is that Joanne?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yes,
Okay.
it's my initial in my name. It should be J. And as present.
What did
J.
Oh, yeah, it says N.
Yeah. That's
Oh,
okay. But
sorry.
oh, that's all right.
Oh, they're next to each other on the keyboard.
Yes, exactly.
And it was right before Norma, so
Yeah.
So
I'm
So-
sure.
is that a motion to approve them with the correction, Joanne?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion? And all in favor of approving the minutes with the changing of the N to a J for Joanne, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, then moving right along, number 3, correspondence. I'm not aware of any unless you got some in, Tara.
Well, we had all that correspondence from Conduct, but that's more under the second, right? So
Right,
no correspondence then.
thank you. Number 4, citizens' comments. Hearing none. We'll move on to number 5, committee business. I have one minor item. I noticed when I was perusing the town's website to go to the agenda that went under the list of members, Ken Bosley should be added as alternate. He's not, since we voted him in a couple months ago. I don't know who's in charge of updating the town website, but
Oh, here comes Norma, by the way. I am an admin on the MSRAC page, so I should be able to do that. Either Renee or I can do it.
okay, great. Does anybody have any other committee business under MSRAC?
no.
Okay, then we'll move to item 6, member comments. Then in record time, I think we can adjourn the
Right.
MSRAC portion of our meeting at 9:05. So that will move us right into, let's call to order the regular meeting of the BAR Grant Subcommittee at 9:06 a.m. So this after the call to order, next thing is approval of minutes of the March 26, 2021 special meeting.
I have
So moved.
two corrections.
Same mistake.
Okay, is that a motion by anybody?
Yes, I have 2 corrections.
2 corrections, okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's my name again. In the present, it's J Hall.
Okay,
And your name, Janet, was misspelled on the second page under design number 3.
oh yeah, it says Janie
Yeah,
instead of Janet.
yeah, that's it.
Okay, can we have a second to approve the minutes with those 2 corrections?
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, then moving on to item number 3, correspondence. We do have an email, and I think it's appropriate if we discuss it under the lot zip project because it's directly related to that, if nobody else minds. Sid- we don't have any other miscellaneous correspondence. Is that true, Tira?
No, all the correspondence has come through Condot as a part of the conversations between you, Yang, and you, and me, and Rich, and whomever.
Okay, so yeah, we'll discuss that all under the committee business then, I guess.
Yep.
I think that's appropriate. Item 4, citizens' comments.
It's your moment to shine, Amy.
I don't have any comments, which is typical.
Thank you. Okay, item 5, committee business. The first item is the Lot Zip Route 12 sidewalk project. We did have a good flurry of email correspondences and clarifications regarding construction inspection and grant requirements. And then I also had a relatively long phone call with Yu Yang yesterday to try to even clarify more from his perspective, how he sees things that will work. So I don't know whether you want to start off, Tira, or you want me to go into just some more detail about it.
Why don't you go, Janet? Because while I'm taking notes, it gets a little kooky, and that might help me focus my head a little bit.
Okay, so we did get actually some really good information. Finally, a gentleman from Condot who kind of runs these programs responded with a lengthy email. And essentially what he said was the line item that inspection comes out of, which is called incidentals. It really isn't incidentals. It's basically construction inspection and material testing. There's no other, nothing else can come out of that. And they give 10% of the contract amount for that. So it's a big pot. It's like $175,000 that can only be used for construction inspection and material testing. So, we couldn't get like extra lights out of it. We couldn't get extra trees or anything like that out of it. So that's pretty much how he left that. But then when I talked to Yu Yang, because we know that some of our local towns like Putnam and Killingly have been using staff inspection, and they weren't really hiring a consultant. And I found out how that works. And I think this will be really important for somebody in the town to get the more, the details of really how this works. But essentially, that $175,000 can be used for the consultant services, but it can also be used to reimburse like town employees who are working on this grant. So hours that Rich spends, or if he delegates to any of his staff, that can be reimbursed under this grant. And so I think that's really a good conversation that whatever, Amy and Tira and Rich can have, how to maybe capitalize on that, because I really don't think the consultant's going to use the whole $175,000. I mean, it further goes into whoever kind of does the office management of the grant. Like when the contractor submits his payment requisitions, and they have to be, typically the consultant will review them first, but then in-house, of course, the town reviews it to keep the books. And those times too, that time spent too is also eligible under this incidentals item, because the town basically pays it, keeps track of it through their good record keeping, and then gets reimbursed by the state. So I wasn't aware of that. And I'm not sure why NECOG never explained that to us, because I think that's really great, kind of good for the town.
Yeah.
Well, it's certainly a part of a lot of what you can ask for in a lot of different kinds of grants. I don't, quote unquote, charge the town for my management of the BAR grant. It's just a layer of cost that we, don't accrue, because I consider it to be a part of my job, my regular job. I would be, assuming that I'm the project administrator here, which I imagine I will be, I would consider that the same. So there's no reason to tap those funds for that, and we could tap them for the project inspection, which is a much more, I mean, Rich pays his guys by the hourly for tasks that they do. So that reimbursement makes a lot more sense because it's taking them out of a normal workflow to do a different kind of inspection. But it's no different for me.
Well, I mean, obviously that's an internal discussion you'll have to have, but I guess the question would be if there's $175,000 and we put out an RFP for a consultant and they come in at 100,000, that leaves 75,000 that the town could reimburse themselves for staff use if there's leftover money. So I hear what you're saying, but maybe your time could be reimbursed in some, if there's extra money. Otherwise the state just keeps it, right?
Yeah,
right.
yeah, they
Oh.
just reabsorb it.
Yeah, so that's just, food for thought. However, and I really feel like NECOG should provide the town with more information on that. Like, I don't know if it's how the reimbursement works, whether it includes, benefits and everything. I don't know, or they just have an hourly rate. I don't know how it works.
So Janet, you found out about this by talking to other towns?
Well, we did get a good clarification memo from the state that clearly said that the incidentals line item can't be used for anything but inspection and material testing. But what I found out from Yu Yang was that can be distributed between town staff and an outside consultant. But it also does lead to the fact that we will have to put out an RFP, I believe, for inspection, contract administration, material testing. Because Yu Yang does think that it will exceed the $50,000 because the material testing alone will be like 20,000. And there's no benefit to the town from saying we only want an inspector 8 hours a week when they could have one 3 days a week and that money would be paid for under the grant. Essentially, because it can't be used for anything else.
So
Right,
Janet,
so when we're talking about reimbursing town employees, reimbursing the town for work by town employees, that really can't be work by town employees that's digging a ditch. It's got to be work by town employees who are somehow involved in the inspection process, it would seem.
Inspection or administering it.
Right. Yep.
I mean, so some towns, especially like larger towns who have a large DPW staff, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they don't take an employee, an inspector, and assign them like half time to
Yep.
go to such a job as this,
Yeah.
so Janet, in terms of now what we're talking about is 2 RFPs, is the logic that those get generated and posted simultaneously?
I think it's only one RFP.
Well, we're going to an RFP for the construction process itself, and then also now for the inspection, right? Those are 2 separate services.
Right. Well, I guess I think it's potentially, we would call it bidding for the construction contract is kind of more put it out to bid because you mostly take the low bidder, whereas the consultant, I guess that is like an RFP for material inspection, construction administration, material testing, inspection, and contract administration. So those would all be wrapped up into an RFP for engineering consultants.
Okay,
And
yeah,
it would
so
be-
that's just me being lazy with terminology. So the construction's an ITB and the inspection is an RFP.
Right.
Right, and they would have to be independent, or you can't have the contractor responsible for the inspection because there could be a conflict of interest there.
Correct.
Right. And their qualifications don't align anyhow. I mean, contractors are contractors and consultants are consultants. So it's not really the same thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, so
But
I
the
don't.
question is the same. They should be posted simultaneously.
Oh, yes. Yes, I'm sorry, Tira. I believe they should because usually when you put something out to bid, you give the contractors like a month or something to put together their prices. But when the prices come in, the town does need to be ready at that moment to start working with the consultant who's hired for the inspection and contract administration. So it would totally slow down the project if we waited till the bids were received and then started advertising for an inspector, an inspection firm. So yes. I think that makes sense, Tira.
And if we are considering Freeman Company as a contractor who's likely to submit a proposal, they can't they can't write their own RFP, which means that you and Rich and I have to do it. Yes, yes.
Yes, I can, yes, the three of us should do it. I can make a draft and you guys can pitch in, but I also did ask Yu Yang, which I think it's appropriate, that he review it. It doesn't give him a heads up, but I mean, it doesn't give him a price advantage, I should say that, because their firm is gonna have to fulfill the scope of services and provide prices for the scope of services, the same as all the other firms.
Yeah, and it's not like he doesn't already have a heads up.
Right, exactly. Exactly. So I don't see that as being any kind of conflict of interest or anything, because it's going to be just a straight scope of services. So really what we want him to review is the scope of services. Does he think that these bullet point items are going to make sense for material testing, contract administration, and inspection on our sidewalk project, kind of period. So.
Gotcha. Just trying to keep my logical pieces straight.
Does anybody have any questions on that? Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah.
Amy, please weigh in.
Perfect sense to me.
Okay. So it's not out to bid yet, so we have a little bit of time. I'll try to do it like in the next month to make a draft copy of the RFP and shoot it over to everybody.
Okay.
And the other thing is we are going to have to just double check the state's requirements to make sure if there's any requirements, because it's their grant money that's paying for this, that, it's different from just the town putting out an RFP. It's being funded by the state. So we'll have to double check and make sure it meets any state requirements for RFPs.
So is that something we're passing back to Jim at NECOG or passing directly back to CONDOT?
Well, that's a good question. I was going to just try to review the guidelines while I wrote it, but it would be good if they agreed, if it was like submitted to them and they said yes.
So maybe maybe once that's drafted, we'll send it to Vitaly for comment.
Yes, I think that would be an excellent idea, Tira. So there are some other interesting things in that email, but I don't want to rush anybody who wants to. If anybody has any further questions on the contract administration or RFP, then I guess I'll move on a little. They asked them about the DBE, which is the disadvantaged business enterprise requirements, because originally in the draft contract documents Freeman prepared, there was a really high minority set aside that, might not be appropriate to the demographics in Northeast Connecticut. So that was clarified. So they're essentially, the guidelines are that lots of projects use only state funding, not federal funding. And so they fall under the small business enterprise requirements, which is the SBE instead of the DBE. So when our construction project goes out to bid, there'll be a 25% set aside for small business enterprises. So that could obviously be fulfilled by the prime contractor, or he can have, subcontractors, you know, that would meet the small business set aside.
Do they have to hire? Is that what that's saying? There
Well,
has
yeah.
to be 25%?
Yes, 25% of the construction cost has to be for businesses who are, certified small business enterprises in the eyes of the state.
How do you do that with a project like this, where you have one contractor who's theoretically gonna just has all the equipment and labor ability and maintenance and management ability to just do it themselves?
Well, there's a lot of aspects that they could subcontract out, and it might go for materials too. They could get their gravel from a company
Yep.
that's a small business enterprise. They could have, the bituminous paving versus the concrete forming be a
Right,
they
okay,
could get a landscaping contractor. So these guys are used to it, and so they have probably reliable subs
yeah,
that they can count on to fulfill their requirement. And those were really the two main points that I got out of that memo, which was very good for clarification. Do you have anything else to add to that, Tira?
Well, Rich and I have both had a couple of conversations with a gentleman named Carlos at Condot, who is in a different division than Vitali. And what Rich tells me is that these departments do not communicate with each other. So the question of the timing continues to arise, where this, I guess it's the construction division that this gentleman, Carlos, who is a project manager, works for, is not hearing from the sort of review division where they are in their process, so that they still want to know when we're going out to bid, yada, 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 what our process is. And I keep saying, well, we're just waiting for that final word from Condot, as far as I know. So it's still a juggling act, but it does appear that everybody understands that the paving for Route 12 is going to occur next year because in part of this project, but they are still pushing us to let them know when we're going to start.
Okay. Do you think it's pretty well underhand, or do you think in hand, I guess I should say, or do we need like?
Well, Rich told me he was going to keep sort of calling them and touching base with them. I think once we have a date where we know we are going out to bid, that answer may satisfy, because that'll give them a sense of when we're going to get it rolling. He also, by the way, this Carlos gentleman, I wish I could remember his last name.
Wiberly.
Thank you. I won't remember it 5 minutes from now, but thank you anyway. It did seem to think more consistently with what Freeman thought, that we could get this started and possibly even done later in this season. I know Rich's feeling that it wouldn't be able to be done was based more on when contractors are going out to bid for stuff, and that we'd be too late and miss the boat. But the feeling that the gentleman I had the phone conversation with did seem to be that, no, you can get that done this year, I bet you,
Well, the one good thing is that I know that Yu Yang really wants to do it too. He's at the point now too that they're not going to delay it. He is literally waiting for the comments from District 2, and he'll put the project out to bid. So yeah, the sooner the better. The sooner it goes out, the more likely more sidewalks will be poured this year.
So who are we pushing for the final comments from District 2? Vitali?
Well, no, Vitali, I believe, is more like in Newington in the headquarters. In District 2, there were the people, well, Carlos was always in District 2. I don't know whether he still is. They shuffle around a little bit. But District 2 is the Norwich local people that review the plan in minutia and make very highly specific comments based on drainage, traffic, pavement markings. So it's in Norwich who's reviewing it right now. And so we do kind of need to keep up the pressure. I mean, I would say, maybe the middle of next week, Yu Yang or the town can reach out and say, do you have any questions? Do you have any comments? We want to get this project out to bid.
But we don't know who the person is.
It's not a person, it's a team of people. That's what the problem is. I think it's headed by Andrew Morrill. All the letters are always signed by him, but he has a whole staff. So if any one of that one staff hasn't completed his review, then you're not going to get the final, because they assemble all the comments and deliver them to you at once.
Okay, because when I was talking to Rich here in my office earlier this week or late last week, I thought he said that Andrew Morrill has moved on from District 2. So it probably would be helpful to confirm whether that is the same supervisor of that team or not.
Rich said that to me too, but I think he indicated that his office is now in Newington, but he's still like in charge of those people in Norwich.
Okay.
The second guy then I would say would be Daniel McBride. He's in charge of the permits in District 2.
Okay.
So even if Andrew Morrill signed the letter, Daniel McBride did all the work. So that's the way DOT works.
Alrighty then.
Whoever does the work doesn't sign the letter.
Okay, so
Maybe
that's my note here. I've got middle of next week, reach out to Andrew Morrill and or Daniel McBride for their expectation for final comment.
That would be fantastic. Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
just keep trying to be the squeaky wheel once a week.
Yeah.
Any other Route 12 sidewalk? Oh, well, here's something that Yu Yang said. It wasn't in the memo. Now that we found out that incidentals can't be used for anything but inspection, I asked him, what about the contingency line item? Because that's also pretty big. And of course, as the name says, contingencies are kind of made for unexpected circumstances. If you find ledge, if you find unsuitable soil conditions, something, of course, that's what contingencies are for. But if there is leftover at the end, then can it be used to expand the scope of the project, like for the lights? And Yu Yang said, essentially, no, you can't have something that's considered expanding the scope, because the project is approved for what it was approved for. So the only way you can use up your contingency, if there is any, it almost has to be kind of subtle. For example, if you're pouring the sidewalk in front of the town hall, but the section you want to meet up to of sidewalk is all cracked, then you can say, well, we're going to have to replace this cracked section, because otherwise our new walk isn't going to be supported structurally on the end. So that's the only thing you can do, is maybe subtle project creeps.
So it's got to have logical flow from what you're actually doing.
Right. You can't say we're going to go another 100 feet down Riverside Drive, for example. If you have extra money, you can't just say, well, let's just go longer. Let's go another 100 feet, or let's add a couple trees, or let's add a couple lights. If they weren't envisioned in the project scope, you likely can't use the contingency money for it. So, and we don't know if there's going to be leftover contingency anyhow, but it's good to know our options if there is.
Mhm.
Yeah, we would
Maybe
have
this,
to-
we might shortly want to discuss some more of what might be eligible under those ARP funds,
What are ARP funds?
the American Rescue Plan.
Oh, that's right. I remember when ARA came out, there was a lot of good projects done. Okay, well, maybe we can discuss that under other committee business, Tira. How's-
Well, I definitely don't have enough information about what's eligible to
Okay.
discuss that intelligently here, but it's probably worth me and Amy sitting down with the guidelines for what it can be used for. I don't know who has made requests or proposals within the town to expend any of those funds. I don't believe they've actually been dispersed yet. I'm sure that there are guidelines and I know very few of them. But some of this might be eligible as particularly some of the public safety stuff that gets talked about, like the lighting. That lighting seems to me like it could logically be eligible if it's improving transit connectivity and safety on a site. So, but I don't know. I don't know.
All right, so agenda item for another meeting potentially.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Anybody have anything else on the Lotsip sidewalk project? Questions, comments?
Blaine Road, any update with Rich and his time schedule?
He mentioned it yesterday very briefly in a department heads meeting that we had. As I recall, I think he said late summer for that, probably.
So much for first thing in the spring.
Well,
Yeah, that's right. guys.
everything gets juggled. I mean, it was always going to be the beginning of the project or the end of the project with the sidewalks, right? So, you know.
Okay.
So anything else? And otherwise we can move on to the River Mill and see if there's any update there.
No comment. Let's,
So, okay, so let's move on to item B, John Gumpert liaison, River Mill site plan submission status. Did you hear anything, Amy, or?
I have not. It's been on my mind. I really need to reach out, so I apologize for not having done that. Been caught up in, my brain's been working around budget. Tara, have you heard anything or spoken to anybody?
Not that's really relevant to the committee. I've had a couple of incidental conversations between the fire marshal and John and Pam and their local property manager about getting in there for inspections, and one of the existing tenants had a question, but nothing substantive as to the the status of where they are with their financing and sort of the ink drying on that deal. I did get an answer to the question that they had asked off the record in that last phone conversation that the four of us had, Amy, but it turns out that it's kind of moot now, so they're good, but it was positive.
Okay, well, we'll, obviously that item is on the agenda every month, so we look forward to next month, maybe getting an update from Mr. Gumpert, and hopefully he's still moving along.
yeah.
So I guess we're up to item C, other committee business under the bar grant. Is there any other?
Just FYI, we are down within the last 5% of funds for the bar grant. So at some point, the bar grant subcommittee is technically going to become something else like the Lotsip subcommittee because there's not going to be any bar grant left. But yeah, we are within the finish line of the expenditures on this grant period.
And it's true that all the money has to be paid out by the end of June. Is that true? Is it a fiscal year thing?
It is a fiscal year thing.
Okay.
And Freeman's current contract will wipe it.
Right. And that's pretty much how it was designed. That's why we had to negotiate Freeman to the amount of their
Correct.
design contract to fit within the bar grant budget. So that's all as it should be. We got to use it all up, and hopefully we'll get a great project from it. But I guess we'll have to look for other grants for other projects.
I'm all over it.
All right.
All right.
Well, like I said, we just have to change the name of the subcommittee to the MSRAC, to the lot zip.
Right.
Lots.
Well, in the DECD required us to have a separate subcommittee, which is why it's why we did this. When it just comes to running the sidewalk project, when it's under construction, I think that'll be appropriate to have that under just MSRAC.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that the DECD made you peel out a second for it.
Yes, they did. We had to establish a bar grant committee as one of the conditions of receiving the grant.
Kira, was there any more conversations with someone that had been kind of interested in the building site?
Yes and no. The ink will be drying on their first two purchases today, I believe. For the first week and a half that they were here, it was literally emails, phone calls, texts at home, meeting with them like every day for 7 to 10 days. And then they've been doing some background work on some other stuff. But it was in my plans to follow up with them Monday to make sure that those two first deals closed and see what they wanted to move on to next. I'm hoping it's Belding and not the other one that they're looking at, but they are super interested in a lot in Thompson right now.
Oh,
So this group that you mentioned last time, they are making a purchase, they are presenting a purchase order, a purchase offer on the building's property?
No. They bought Peter Vangel's two properties, which I think you knew. And those deals closed today, I believe, this is the 9th, I think.
All right, so now they would be interested in the buildings perhaps, okay.
Right. I mean, they and I walked every vacant parcel in the downtown radius on a couple of days during that first week. And Janet, I know they've been back in touch with you for the old plans that Vangel did have approved over there. So, but I think you referred them back to CME, right?
For the Rawson Avenue,
Right.
I think I did, yes. Yeah, they have not made any comments to me whatsoever about Beldings, only the two Vangel properties.
Right. Yeah, that was their next move on step, was the two large vacant parcels. But my instinct tells me these guys are still serious about at least one of those. They've spent a lot of time down here already, and they apparently have very deep pockets.
wow,
Great.
that's good.
So I guess we can move on to member comments, number 6.
Oh,
Would anybody have any?
I do. I want to
Okay.
thank Steve for his humorous remarks in his minutes last month.
Thanks. I was just making sure people were reading them.
Well, yes. I did like him, yes.
Okay, thanks, Joanne.
Anything else before we adjourn?
I suppose I'll make one more try to see if anybody on this committee wants to join the Affordable Housing Plan Working Group. One last shot.
You're not talking to me, right?
Well, I'm sort of talking to you. I keep looping you into the emails, but
Yes, and I am attending, so I should have responded, yes.
okay. Excellent, Joanne. Thank you.
I just
All right, then I think we are probably going once, going twice. Any more member comments? Then I guess we can adjourn this regular meeting of the bar grant, and we'll see everybody again next month. I guess you'll keep us posted about whether it's going to be live or Zoom based on state regulations.
Yes, as of this moment, as I understand it, everything after April 20th has to go back to the old normal. I would not be surprised, however, if that changes to allow for a number of different options.
Okay,
uh-huh.
all right, then you'll keep us posted.
I shall.
So everybody have a nice weekend.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's
And
pretty-
we'll see you next month.
Okay, thanks, Janet.
Have a good weekend,
Bye.
everyone.
Yeah.
Sure.
Bye.
Bye-bye.